Hey, Double D back again. So I've been playing around on the PTR, and I've been specifically looking at the campaign questline and what it's like to play through that single player experience that Blizzard's building in 11.1 and building off of everything that they delivered going into the war within. It's a pretty big, expansive, 3 expansion story arc that they want to all tie together, and so it's supposed to engage you. It's supposed to draw you in with characters and developments that you'll want to pay attention to. And I gotta say, by and large, the WoW questing still feels weird. The story delivery feels weird, and that experience, it seems like it gets bottlenecked a lot of the time. Now, I'm not talking about like pre-Dragonflight. Yeah, if you make a new character and you go through Chromie time, you can be caught in this weird endless loop of I'm doing Cataclysm questing content, and now all of a sudden I'm in Battle for Azeroth, and you can stick your character into these weird loops where you're not sure what you're supposed to be doing or where you're supposed to go. But when you create a new character now and you end up in the Dragon Isles, now that the expansion is passed, you can play through that entire story arc for the zones, for the main quest line, everything. You're introduced to all of the characters and you have all the resolution at your fingertips outside of the raids specifically or the end cutscenes for them. I know you can view them separately, but you don't experience it as a player playing through it as you would if you were to, snag together a raid team when it was current content. But when you play through all of that, the pacing makes a lot more sense. The story seamlessly flows together. And I think that's kind of where it falls apart. Like at the beginning of The War Within, when you're just starting out in 11.0 and you're playing through this expansion's campaign content, eventually, yes, you'll meet the Queen and you'll have to be introduced to the Nerubians and their palace that you're going to storm, and you're fighting with Illyria against Xalatath, and all these little characters being introduced and all these little plot hooks to draw you in. But then, in the first 2 weeks of the expansion, you basically get to, all right, and tune in next time in 3 weeks where you can finally enter the raid and see the end cutscene that closes out this story arc. And that's the part that feels weird, along with a couple of other things I want to touch on. But, as someone who, yeah, I play through all of the campaign content, I clear off all the exclamation marks. I don't skip cutscenes. I listen. I'm not watching videos or listening to music on a second monitor or anything like that. I try to be present for the first time that I play through this stuff. But the campaign content, and to an extension, the open world content that's available to you, feel like they're lagging behind the aspirational goals that Blizzard has set going into this 3 expansion-wide story arc worth of content. And the two main pain points, I think, for that are the pacing and bloat. Now, for the pacing, right, think back to the beginning of the expansion. You play through 7, 8, 9 hours of campaign content, and then it kind of just gets cut off at the knees. When they've spent all this time drawing you into characters, into zones, into factions, investing you in the story, just for it to all build up to a climactic ending that you don't get to play through. If you're spending all of this extra time to try and make a more qualitative approach to delivering voice lines to the player, story beats to the player, you're offering them a lot more cutscenes to where you can see their character or accessory characters around them interact with the world and make giant changes instead of just reading it in the quest log. But I think a better way to enhance that player experience is to offer all of the story missions, all of the zones, the main quest lines, at the beginning of whatever that patch's content is. If it's 11.0, then release everything for 11.0 so that you can fully play through that experience. You can make it all the way to that climactic ending, and in addition, I think you should be able to play through it. I think follower raids need to make an introduction for closing out these story beats. You shouldn't just make it all the way to the Queen, and now you gotta charge the palace, but that doesn't happen for 3 more weeks. And then you may not even kill Queen for a few more weeks after that. And I think the main benefit is that you're giving players that resolution. And seemingly, that should be important to you, right? Otherwise, why are you spending all this extra time making additional cutscenes, additional voice lines, and story beats? Why is there even a dialogue option to stay a while and listen if you don't care about that engagement into the story that you're building across the next few years, and investing in a villain that hopefully carries you over a line that everyone can clap at the end and say, wow, that was pretty good, instead of pretending it doesn't exist, like the jailer. The next problem being the bloat. And this isn't really necessarily something that's an issue with the main questline or the story that you're playing through, but rather the assault of bullshit that is just surrounding you while you're trying to focus on a story, while you're trying to get invested in characters and have an engaging experience. It's the 12 different exclamation points that assault you when you walk into a town, and you already know what 90% of them are going to be. Just guess. What are they going to be? Come on, you already know. You're going to pick up an object or kill a thing. You already know that 90% of the time, that's what you're doing when you're going into these quest hubs. Now, there are a few that are far between that are actually compelling and engaging, but by and large, it's shit that really just ends up being repeatable content or thrown into the world questing content once you hit max level. And we've done this same cycle for so long, I just don't think we have to. And in fact, that would be my solution. Greatly reduce, if not outright remove, all of these side quests and secondary objectives. They just kind of draw you out of it. They take away from the time that you're spending getting invested. And for those ones that are engaging or offer some type of emotional pull, weave those into the storylines or the main quest line as a whole. It just frees up the opportunity to focus more on what you would think you want players to pay attention to and to experience. Do you really need them to pay attention to and experience looting 6 more bags or killing 13 more wolves? Probably not. I would go so far as to say, I bet they've done it before. What's going to do that heavy lifting? What's going to pull them in? It's probably not going to be quest hubs. You just don't get those same dopamine hits as you would in, say, playing through Classic and you got 12 quests to turn in at Gadget Zan. Yeah, that bangs and that feels good, but that's pretty absent in modern WoW. And I'm not advocating for that to come back. They're two different experiences. They're about different things. And all of the rewards and everything that you might miss out on should those side quests and secondary objectives leave, like, reputation gains or pets, toys, mounts, whatever, all of those things should still be present, and I think you should gain them, even passively, through doing the actual in-game content. Like, where could you get the most reputation gains as a whole? I think it should go zone or main story questline, and then that zone's events, then that zone's delves, that zone's dungeons, and then the raid should also tie into it. I don't mean thematically or story-wise, I just mean reputation rewards-wise, what you're offering players for continually completing content. And I think the benefits to this are pretty apparent, right? If you spend less development time populating a map full of markers and having a bunch of, kind of meaningless side objectives that don't really feel all that worthwhile to begin with, it gives you the opportunity to focus more on things like the events, right? And making them more eventful, or shaving off some of the rougher edges of delves, or beefing up that onboarding process that exposes players into other avenues of the in-game content, or just more engaging content, rather than flying around the map, dropping in on a location, killing a bunch of mobs or a rare, picking daisies, whatever, for 12 gold. This deep into WoW's lifespan, I think they need to keep taking big swings towards their existing systems. Things like dragon riding, delves, follower dungeons. All of these are big hits, and I think this aspect needs the same treatment. Taking a hard look at the questing and story content and inspecting what and how it's offered to players, what that experience is like, and how you could build a stronger engagement with it. Because 2 more expansions of 4 zones, 12 quest hubs, 4 brain-off events, and 2 island patches, it just seems like that's not it. Or at least it could be a lot more. I'll still play it, of course, but that's because I gather my engagement from the game through other avenues that it offers. However, I still think it's important that we try to raise that bar everywhere we can. And if we can achieve that by delivering more quality over quantity, I don't see a reason not to explore that option, especially in these major patches between expansions. I think these are the perfect testing grounds to try and maneuver your way into a more engaging story and questing experience. It's been this way for so long, and I don't think I've ever heard anyone say, yeah, I love all the side quests and shit littering my map. Yes, they like the rewards, the transmogs, titles, pets, mounts, whatever, but you can still have all of those things delivered to the player and even granted to the player for completing different content, maybe more engaging solo player content that you seem to be investing a lot of time into. That being said, the goblin stuff is shaping up to be pretty sweet, and I've really enjoyed it. I'm just hoping that I can play through and experience the whole thing fully and not get dragged down by a bunch of accessory bullshit. But anyway, thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. If you've been asking about the music, I posted a full playlist of all the songs, so it's there if you want it. But anyways, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.